Welcome to Lex's World. I've been asked a couple times now to give advice as to what's the appropriate age to start using cannabis. This is, of course, an opinion question, and lots of people don't see it the way I do, but that's okay. My own short answer is recreational use of marijuana should ideally begin at adulthood, and medical use can begin at any age so long as the medical condition warrants it. That's the short answer. Now, more importantly, how I got there. First, for the recreational users. Over lots of episodes, I've talked about a ton of stuff. We've talked about why weed is illegal, what it does to the brain and body, whether it's addictive, comparing it to cigarettes and alcohol, all sorts of things. After compiling all of that data, compared to other recreational use substances, weed always has been and continues to be very safe, much safer than alcohol or cigarettes overall. That said, marijuana does have its share of risks and harms, which apply exponentially the younger you are. For instance, weed does far more damage to a developing brain than to a developed one. Not nearly as much damage as alcohol, but there is damage there. With all that in mind, cannabis should only be used recreationally by those who have the maturity to provide informed consent. In different societies, who's mature enough to provide informed consent varies, but it usually means 18 to 21 years old. So there you go. Now, I don't live under a rock. I know a ton of kids under 18 smoke weed and do all the other stuff too. My advice, if you're a parent and you're wondering how to deal with your minor who smokes weed, as a parent, I think that you should have an honest conversation with them and then apply your discretion, keeping in mind that there's a major difference between a 16-year-old who smokes up and drinks at an occasional house party versus one who does it between classes. As for medical users, here I take a very different line. I do not believe prescribed medical weed should be limited to adults. A lot of people would frown at giving a small child cannabis to help them with their multiple sclerosis or their cancer or whatever, because it's a relatively new idea. But the reality is that you can truly help them, and it's getting more popular to do that. And if it helps, how is cannabis different from any other medication you could give them? It's not. Especially when you consider that cannabis as a medication is much safer and milder than all kinds of dangerous meds that we casually prescribe to kids nowadays. As those on the cutting edge of clinical research are finding, the cannabis patients receive doesn't have to even be smoked or necessarily be psychoactive to contain the particular cannabinoids that a patient might need for their specific condition. We've also learned, and I've touched on this before, that pill-based imitations aren't as effective or as safe as the real herb. So as long as something works and their parents give that informed consent, any patient, regardless of age, should be able to obtain cannabis. And I'll link to my episode on Marinol in the description if you're interested in learning about that. Well, that's the show for the day, guys. Hope you liked it. If you did, be sure to subscribe, hit that like button.